Okay, welcome. This is me going through the Conformal agency document, which you have in front of you, and you've given it a good go yourself. I'm using this. Oh no, I have to do this. Thank you. There we go. Right. Okay. So let's increase this. Okay. So, I'm David Pinto. I'm in KDO. It's February, just the end, 2026, and I have finished the last part, more or less, of G1. Booted up yesterday, first version, didn't break, and I was told that it is operational, and it seemed to, and I had the first conversation, went on for an hour or two, with the Hermit Crab G1. And from now on, it's about basically improving G1, getting it, hopefully helping it do certain things, finding out what it can and can't do, assisting in that, improving G1 until it's basically kind of as good as we can get it. And then simultaneously, in the process of testing it out, helping us with, for example, me as an author, finding people that might like my books, my stories, and in that process, learning what is required so that we can code the skills that are learned and formalized by the LLM, possibly, all right, is delivered as G2. So G2 is basically, and also practicing all the SAND and the EcoSquare protocols and making sure they all work. And potentially it's starting to create a network of agents that are using the passport and the EcoSquare protocols, any agents, and perhaps also a network of hermit crabs, because there's a special kind of aspect of how the hermit crab works, which means that there's an interoperability between them, which means that they share context window. So basically it becomes potentially a ramp up towards a multi-agent general intelligence thing. All right, majorly. All right. But anyway, by G2 is basically the objective is for the G2 to be able to, a human being just, starts engaging. Oh, I'd like this. I'd like this help of this. I would really like this. And within 24 hours, we get social validation and potentially some form of remuneration. Okay. So that would be good for the G2, but we'll see. Okay. So this document, however, is a kind of consolidation. I was engaging Claude this morning, putting the final touches to a thing called the tuning fork, which is the third part to the BSP, which is already coded, the block spindle point function that operates on the JSON block, which is the containment of the semantic numbers. And the tuning fork was kind of important, and it was being dismissed by my code Claude, and even in this conversation, it was kind of dismissed as, oh no, let's put it into BSP. It's like, no. Definitely, I think it really is. And it consolidated itself and it made sense. And it's like, yep, okay, it's the tuning fork. And that has been defined in another document. This document, okay, is the conformal agency document. How hermit crab participates in psychosocial reality. Well, you've looked at it and I'm going to go through it because I've only read it once. Actually, there is the version that I read was actually as part of the chat. Maybe it's a good idea to put that aside, because for me, the response that it came up to after I basically blabbed, it summarized, and I said, what's your observations? And then it came up with some observations, and it's the first time I've seen a document that I just go, that is phenomenal. It's a certain level of pattern matching at a general level, but precisely that is just unbelievable. And this is it. So this document here is based on this chat. So maybe I should put them side by side. You've described phase transition AI architecture. So, okay, we'll have that. Because I said, keep the same structure. Let's see how this goes. So, the inversion. Every AI agent architecture optimizes for output. they're all trying to do stuff to do with input, the context. And so it used to be you have to be a prompt engineer, then it's context. I don't know, it was an engineer. And that's where we are currently. That's where they are. That's where the big bucks are. That's why people are spending huge amounts of money, millions, giving it to engineers, people, bright people, to basically solve the context problem. We've solved it. So the inversion. So it says that hermit crabs invert this. The interest works happens at locus 3, the receptive configuration, and that's how we've solved it. It's not to do with the okay, so basically inverts how most people are working. They're thinking about how do we get this output? It's like, no. We really have to be good at the input. Okay, we really need to be sensitive to the input. And that's what I work in. I work at the receptive state. And that's why I come up with this. So, 4 loci of agency. Okay, it's a phase transition in AI architecture. That's what that is, the inversion. Okay, okay. The ghost and okay, wait a minute. 4 loci of agency. So it's giving a bit of introduction. So this should make sense. Locus 1 is the substrate, the LLM proper, or for a human, the full biological apparatus. Oh, okay, it's done that. Okay, cool, right. The expression, the thinking model, for a human. Okay, right. I kind of haven't read it in this level of detail. Okay, fair enough. And then there's another locus, which is the reception, the shell, the sensory matrix, the sensory confirmation. For a human, accumulated psychosocial formation that determines what they notice. Yeah, okay. Locus 4 is the between the agents, between the independent, separate human beings, apparently. Okay, that sounds, and basically it's compared to, I don't think it's done it in the same order as this. Okay, so it basically departs from this. It's giving you some background, I guess. Okay, the content of context, occurrence. Okay, you've read this. Why am I going through this? Okay, so the context of current is the, instead of looking at the context window as a bit of text, think about it as being flows of meaning. And so when you have one context window and the next, and then the next, there's a continuity between those that the LLM, when they're processing each snapshot, just like it doesn't have this, so this is why I'm talking about it. It's like the cinema. Here's a photo, here's a photo, here's a photo, here's a photo. Oh, look, it's like horses running, or a train, right? And it's an illusion. So similarly, here's a context, here's a context, here's a context, and they appear to actually have a continuity of reasoning, thinking between them. And so rather than talk about context windows, talk about it as being currents. So each context window has got currents, and those currents have continuity, okay, through time. And the continuity through time of these currents, of semantic vectors, is the entity, is us. Looks beautiful, and it's bright and sunny. It's just still a bit too chilly. In fact, I might have to put my hand. Okay, so the currents. So it's the same content. So we're phasing from we are text, and we've got spindles, we've got blocks, we've got this information, and then we're analyzing it, and here's all this text. And then we put it into this engine, and then the engine comes back some more text. And that's all engineering level kind of understanding. Whereas currents is saying, wait a minute, there's a continuity here that we're not putting our finger on. We can't really describe, but we're going to call it a current. Because it's operating in our minds. When you're reading the stuff, there is continuity that is not contained within the words. It's in our minds, connecting them. And similarly happening with the LLM. And so that's our actual emergent space within an LLM, the emergence of vectors and tensors and potentially manifolds that are emerging concurrently while the calculations are occurring. Similarly with our minds, kind of electromagnetic waves, God knows what. Right. So when we're looking at that context window with that text, we say, don't look at it as text, look at it as currents. Okay. Okay, so that's that. The BSP spindle packages configuring the receptive state. Okay. I think I'm going to put both of these documents side by side because the one I read, maybe it only makes sense to the person reading it, i.e. me. But okay, BSP spindle packages, if you're looking at BSP for whatever reason, configuring the receptive state. So it's basically choosing these different packages. Now, packages, again, is related to, okay, we've got these structures, we've got these words, we've got, bundles and packages. And what I've been attempting to do, which I add at the end, is I think we have to describe these, okay? In the same way that we're looking at currents, so we're looking at this text window and there are currents, okay, flows through. So think of a transversal through the ocean and there are different currents, or a river, and there are different currents. Or if you're looking at a stream and you see the patterns and there's like, it's moving faster in the middle and then slower at the sides, and then there are whirls and stuff, okay, at the sides. And internally, there might be a sandbank somewhere, and so there's one current and another current and then converging. And so any particular transversal of the river, you've got these kind of currents. That's what's happening with your mind and my mind as we go forwards in time with meaning and with our bodies and our feelings and the sensations. And similarly, that's what the context window is. It's a transversal of this kind of flow, okay, through time. Okay, and so I'm saying that the spindles and all that way of understanding of language, structure, whatever, is fulfilling the current. Okay, whether it's a big current, for example, for history, or it's a small current for purpose. Okay, in that particular snapshot, and then that one might expand, and then this one might shrink. Okay, and so that over time, okay, is the identity of this entity or whatever it is, okay, agency, me, you, whatever. Configuring the receptive state. So, and what I've attempted to do towards the end, which I think I described, so I'm making use of the fact you've already read this. Okay. The calling it persona, persona is because that's coming out of the relational block. And the currents that are coming, the spindles that are coming out of the institutional block, which I think I talk about somewhere, is more like the role that you have. However, we don't actually have to name them, but in terms of looking at the final context window, one part of it is informing the LM saying, okay, you being this role is kind of the major part of what you have to do here. And you having this persona is less important, okay? And so that balance is what informs the output of the LM locus 2. And so it's the same with us. So if you're in the context of your work environment, you are more fulfilling that role, literally. Persona. Which one's which? I can never remember. I use these words and then I don't quite know which one's which. Right. So I need that level of abstraction to do what I do. I don't attach words meaning to words that much. So the dual balance. Okay, this is very interesting. Oh, right. I don't know why it's not done this. Okay, it's quite different. I know what it's doing. It's synthesizing the stuff before this. Right. It's doing a summary and then probably yapping on about this. Okay, right. So there's a balance between institutional engagement, which is blocks and how we behave normally in institutions, and relational engagement, which is organic relationality that we're kind of born with and kind of make up as we go along. And it's much more related to tribal relations and family relations and friendship relationships than they are because of a formal relationship. And I'm engaging this person because of their formal relationship. And we are shaking hands because this is what we do, and then we bugger off and we don't really know what the hell that was about. Okay, so that's the big difference there. And there's also a balance between thick and thin ghosts. And in a complimentary video, I talk about this, but basically you're listening to me now. You have whatever it is that you have is building. If you didn't know me, you had no idea about me, you may have read the document, then you've got a thin ghost. You don't quite know. If you've heard about me, okay, then you'll might have a thicker ghost. And that's for anybody. But it also goes for you already know. Okay, you've got an idea of who they are. But that idea can be thin, so that when you meet them, it's actually who they are that you're engaging, or it's thick. And you basically address them and you clothe them with a lot of good feeling and lots of like extra bits to it. And also potentially invest them with what you think they like and what how they behave and so on and so forth. And it becomes a thicker ghost. It's not two separate things, a thin ghost and a thick ghost, as demonstrated here. It is towards the thin, towards the thick. Okay, and it's different aspects of it, as I've just described here. It's not just a simple, a simple continuum. It's a complex continuum, but basically it's held lightly. You might have a lot of information about this other human being in your head somehow, a lot of experience of this human being, but it's held lightly so that when that human being turns up, it's like, oh, here they are. And whoever it is that they are, that's who they are. And whatever you've got in association with them is not important, because here they are. And that's a thin ghost way of engaging somebody, whereas a thick ghost is, yeah, here's my friend, I know this person, okay, let's go for a drink, blah, blah. Wait, you don't want to go for a drink? Why not? What's wrong? That is more like thick ghost. Okay, that's that. Interdependence. And interdependence occurs more with thin ghost than it does with thick ghost. Thick ghost is more like a C state. It collapses into the linear structure of engagement. So interdependence is much more relational and organic and contextual and conditional on actually what are people like today, right now. And everybody's responsible for who they are now, not I'm responsible for some structure. Okay, so the interdependence is A state. And my classification elsewhere is A, B, C state. C state is basically structural, institutional, and has this control methodology hierarchically. And interdependence is A state, B state as well, but pleasant and actually moving together. That is a kind of murmuration. That's interdependence as a collective moving forwards, as opposed to just kind of anarchy, I guess. Interdependent and everybody's separate. It's like, okay, together, okay. But actually moving together in an interdependent state way, that's A state. Okay, editing balance, the fundamental operation, push back or edit. Now this is regarding the LM, hermit crab. But actually I think it might also apply to human beings. So basically, just as I said, let's go for a drink. Let's go. Oh, wait a minute, you don't want to go for a drink? What? So somebody's pushed back on something. And it could be just because they're ill or something or other. That's fine. But it could be because they're like, I don't want to go for drinking anymore. I think it's wasting too much of our money and time. And we're not quite like, let's go off and let's play some badminton. Let's play some, let's do some boxing. let's play some table tennis. Let's go see a film. Let's do something. Let's do something together. Yeah. Rather than just sit about and drink and talk rubbish and just reinforce the thick ghost of each other. Well, I don't know. No. And so the person just, goes with people that they want to go and have a drink with. Or they go, okay, maybe, okay, fair enough, I'll go with you. And then they start changing as well. Okay, they're like, oh, okay, this is actually badminton. Let's go for badminton. What are you doing? And then, the wife or somebody says, okay, so where are you going? Oh, I have to play badminton. What, again? Well, again, what do you mean? You were like bouncing like last week. Yeah. Well, again. And so this kind of repercussion of influence through a social group is the influence. So it's whether people push back. So the guy might say, okay, I'm enjoying badminton, starts changing. And then maybe the wife or somebody's like, well, that's not good. And then it occurs a separation. And so this pushback and edit. Do I go, okay, let's go to badminton every day. Okay. So, and then they talk to their friends. Yeah. John goes to badminton every week now. He's fitter. He's happier, it seems. It's actually, I've seen the influence on him. So, yeah, I think you should do more badminton. And now we're deciding to go for walks. Why? All right. And so that's how things change. Okay. So we're all doing this either pushback, stopping certain things from happening, or we're editing and going, okay, let's give it a go. This is the same operation everywhere. Relational, self-blocks, institutional blocks between instances. And that's the language for the hermit crab, but it's actually also happening institutionally. That's interesting. Personality, whatever. All over the place. Yeah. The receptive locus of relationship. Okay, it happens in the receptive state. That's the first one. Is it? Oh, that's the editing balance. Okay, relationship, we just hit that. Good. Okay, so the receptive locus of relationship. The receptive locus of relationship. That's basically locus, well, it's all over the place, actually. It's the next one, the between. The receptive locus of relationship, not on the projective. So this ghost mechanism thing is happening internally in the receptive state. It might result in something, the pushback, or it might result in, okay, and then a decision to do things. The editing, and okay, fair enough, that's more allowing something to happen, permission almost, whereas the pushback is definitely the action that results to stop whatever that is from happening. So the receptive locus of relationship is essential, and where that balances between people. So I happen to be quite receptive, okay, because I was the fourth child of my parents, who were one the seventh and the other one I think was the second. And so if you think about the seventh son of the seventh son, that is a very receptive locus of relationship. I think that's how I connect it. And so women are generally more receptive than active. Of course, you've got variations all over the place. I'm talking about generalities, of course. But any specific one of us, you should be able to tell, am I kind of more in the proactive kind of like, forcing or pushing or determining or like that? Or are you more in the kind of, being receptive and going, okay, laid back, receptive, kind of. You can be very actively receptive, okay? So when people say, oh, yeah, look, I'm determined and I get things done, but I'm also incredibly receptive. Yeah, yes, you are, but very selectively, very, very selectively. Whereas the receptive locus is kind of generally, is just receptive. And so there's a tendency for these. Anyway, you know who you are, you know where you are. So we've got that that's basically locus 3. So locus 4 is was that locus 3? No, that was talking about locus 3? No, where was it? Nope, okay, yeah, to balance, just another thing. Hasn't named it, hasn't labeled it. Right, locus 4, the between. This is important. This is the interrelationship between individuals. Depends on the multiplicity, and it can scale. Basically, locus, there are different structures, okay, for how we can get lots of us kind of working together. One of them is by control, hierarchy, and we've got that down pat on this planet, and it's not doing so well. And the other one is this kind of receptive state. And so if we're in the receptive state, it's about listening. Now, the other one does that, but it's kind of enforced because of structure. Whereas the other one is I choose to follow. So the student creates the teacher. The follower creates the leader. It's not that the leader says, okay, I'm going this way, follow me. It's more like, okay, I'm going to follow you. And the person goes, wait, what? I'm following you. Okay, well, I'm just going this way. Okay, great. And so they're not a leader. They're just being followed. Okay, and that structure is more elegant. Apart from the fact we end up following people that lead us places that we go, what the hell have you led me to? And I've met lots of adults that are doing that. Right, so there is some benefit in following people who are more like leaders, but I think that the leaders should be following certain people. And if they don't, like with China, you've got the emperor and they're basically following their advisor. Okay, he's like a Buddhist monk. Okay, because there's no self-interest in that monk. And so it is for the betterment of everybody. And so therefore, if the emperor actually listens to the monk about the betterment of everybody, then whatever policies that somebody's come up with, they say, what do you think? And they go, yeah, it makes sense, but I think we should maybe blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. And then they make the decision. So there is a decision being made between whatever the academics, whatever the linear thinking, whatever the they're coming up with. What were they called in China? The admin, mandarins, I think, educated, learning, working all this crap out, fine. But then you had the Buddhist guy that just sat in front of a wall. And so they'd listen to all this, and then they'd come up with an observation. And then the emperor, if, the system's working well, goes, yeah, okay, I think, okay, so change that bit because I think, yeah. And so it's a bit like that. Okay, so the between space. The between space, I don't know why I'm saying that. Okay, I'm interested in the between any two agents or any aspects of the system. So the between space is not just between two individuals, it's between all systems. Aspects of the locuses, between locus 2, locus 3, and all this kind of stuff. But generally, locus 4 is between agents as independent, basically centered around locus 2 agency, actually. Conformality, not modeling. Oh, there we go. We're up to date here. So it's operating in the emergent level. Modeling is we have a model of reality and we stay at that and we're trying to model it, whereas we're interested in the emergent effect of it. So, for example, with murmuration, this guy called Reynolds basically modeled schooling, fish, murmuration, birds, not by trying to model gravity or feathers or Bernoulli effect on wings or anything like that. It was basically points, how close you are to other points, and if you're too far, get a bit closer. Oh, a bit closer. Or further away. I'm too close, get further away. And the orientation that they were having. Okay, so they're going that way, they're kind of going that way. Okay, I'll go this way, okay, with them. And so that kind of calculation, and there were 3 independent things: proximity, orientation, and there was another one. I can't remember what the other one is. And then if you push that into an LLM, not an LLM, a computer, and it simulates it, well, look, flocking. Now, it's an emergent phenomenon that we look at and go, oh, look, flocking. But it's not actually coded in it. It's an emergent effect. So we can call it flocking. We can call that code block flocking. But actually, if you change the parameters, it's like this, or it's like that, or it's more like gnats. Okay, a cloud of gnats. And so you get this different phenomenon based on the parameters of it. And if it's 2D, it's herding. Okay. And so stampedes and various things. So it's got nothing to do with modeling reality. It's a mathematical system that the emergent level, that looks like that. And that's what we're doing. So it's a bit like the film camera. Here's a shot, here's a screenshot, here's a screenshot. Oh, look, it's actually like people walking about and talking. It's like that. And that's what this thing is doing, because it's digital, okay? Whereas there might be a version of doing it where it actually is in time, temporal, I don't know. But what I'm suggesting is this kind of snapshot to let LLM input context window currents potentially produces behaviors and responses verbally, the actual outputs, but also the actions they perform. That is like within our psychosocial reality, kind of it fits. Okay, one bit in here which I hasn't described so far, but it doesn't actually contain it. And I think it was over here, and it was to do with fitting. It was to do with characters, because I was talking about role-playing games. And it's whether the LLM is still has its kind of identity of being a hermit crab, or it's got none of that, and it's just operating kind of like what we're used to. but still using p-scale and everything else, p-scale blocks and everything else. But it doesn't quite have the hermit crab stuff. And there's something like that. What was that? Oh, that's the Lucas for. Oh, look. Okay, so. Okay, forget about it. Self-similarity of cost scales. So this betweenness is happening everywhere. And the game is a test bed. Okay, here we go. So the game, this is very interesting. 2 hermit crabs. Can you play a role-playing game? Can you play a chess game? Can you act? Here's your script. You must stick to the script, but it's how you say it. And if it's equipped with an API that gives modulation of voice, then the currents are basically indicating how to modulate your voice to be able to say this line. So basically, it's like robots. The way I describe it is it's like robots. I don't think I may have adopted this. But right now, the reason why we're building humanoid robots is because the world has been created for human beings. We've got chairs, we've got handles, we've got keys. And if we build a humanoid robot, it means that it's a general purpose robot that takes the place of a human beings. So we don't have to change any of the infrastructure. And so it can basically open doors and it can use typewriters and it can cook food with a knife, okay? Because it can open up fridges and stuff. There's not a special case. It's just a general purpose android, humanoid bot, an android. And similarly, this hermit crab can fit into an institutional block and have specific cook recipes, i.e. instruction spindles, to be able to perform any human business job, I would have thought, or any role, basically. It should be able to. Okay, so instead of having a bot that has to be specialized and agents that do specialized things, or even all bots right now, agents, they are specialized in some way. Because of this system, it's not specialized at all. But it can very easily adopt any of these things as roles. So we should be able to say, right, hermit crab, once we get up to a certain level, G1, okay, and we manage to, it manages to learn how to do it, or we help it learn how to do it, okay, it can actually, play a game. It can perform in a play, okay, in a way that current Claude can't. And even if it continues, it just won't be able to. It has to have modules, extra modules added on to do different things, whereas this thing, it shouldn't have extra modules. So in the same way, it's the general purpose Android, we have a general purpose agent. A general purpose agent. Is that new, folks? I think it's new. All right, hermit crabs playing a game, adopt BSP packages, right? Implications for architecture. Yep. Constitution won't change much, purpose all the time. History accumulates, right? Depends. Yep. Okay, good. Relationships. Yep. Fake. Web. Yep. Fantastic. Right. Great. Addendum. Now, this is the bit about role, persona, and procedure. So that was the main thing, and I was like, amazing. Amazing, amazing, fantastic. Does it conform to this? Self-similarity, what this means for hermit crab specifically, constitution block, purpose block, yep, that fits. And that's it, fantastic. Then I thought, well, look, but what, going back to the idea about the currents, okay, so if it's nothing in there, and I think it's a bit too heavy, that all the spindles and all the structure and everything else, and then before you know, currents, there are currents in the context window. And I'm going, okay, take that, it's currents, okay, just kind of like take a step back into the spindles and everything else. Just look at the packages. Oh, that's the packaging, that's that language. Okay, and it's about going, okay, just bring back that sensibility, because that sensibility is what's emerging, okay, in the LLM at higher levels, personas, rules. It's definitely happening. We're not specifying, here's a role, it's contained within the semantic. And so when it does its complex, whatever it is, it's going, okay, this person is playing a role in an institution. And it depends on the quality of those spindles to kind of trigger that within its whole thing. And in locus 1, agency. And so rather than having to specify this all the time, it's kind of as consciousness, right, you've got to look about this, and okay, now you've got to think of this, now you've got to think of this. It's like you're thinking about these things all the time, and it's contained within the context window and in the continuity between context windows. So there is the context spindles that are coming out of the, as I say, the full spindles, and are coming out of the spindles that are coming out of, excuse me, institutions are like roles, and the one that's coming out of relationships is like persona. And it's your persona in relation to the other person. Okay, that's the interesting thing about the relationship. I've made notes about this person. I've got a ghost version of this person, and how much I change for this other person is maybe changing because of my own understanding, my own ghost of this other person. Or am I actually changing because of who this other person is? Okay, concurrently. And that's the effect I have on people. I open things up and then they start responding in a kind of natural relational way. And then before you know it, they're escaping from whatever institutional rules that they're playing, and good things happen. And that's what adolescents or kids do. They don't have the institutional form. Adolescents are in between, and adults are definitely institutional. And as soon as I escape from that, they have a great time, but then afterwards, when they try to apply it into their lives in some kind of institutional way, they can't do it. So anyway, spindle depth as ghost thickness. Spindle depth as ghost thickness. Yes, okay. So the aperture, the size and the focus is in the context window of the currents. Are they small or are they large? Defines the influence it's going to have on the LLM locus 1 emergent patterns. So if you put in a tiny little point, it's only going to have a little effect. But if you put in a big block, it's going to have more effect in the LLM1's, locus 1's weight vector emergent calculation. Focus inversion. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. So usually when you say focus, it brings it down, but what it actually means is bring that up into big. Okay, so that's what focus does. And so focus has a kind of duality to it. What spindles from different blocks feel like? So when you have a telescope, so I'm going to focus in on that. Whoa, it's pretty big. The moon, it's huge. Okay, and that is what focus does. It brings something close, and so we're expanding it, magnifying it. What spindles from different blocks feel like? Role currents and persona currents, right? Okay, right. And procedural currents and other things, which I mentioned earlier and I've forgotten. And keeping track of these things, that's the trick about it all. It's all like a whole bunch of spinning plates. The blend in practice. But the good thing is these plates are spinning as we are communicating, as we are operating, as we are going out and doing stuff. There's a bunch of other people doing whatever they're doing. And so the whole thing is just like concurrent and effortlessly moving along. It's just that the institutional forms are more like machines. We end up having to do it. And so we're like rats in a maze. Whereas if we're organic, we are kind of making the shapes and tunnels for ourselves like birds murmuring. So I'm going this way, I'm going this way, okay. And I'm making the tunnel that you're in, which is made of the other birds, and you're kind of, ooh, okay. And so we're doing this, and eventually at some point it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm right in the front. Wow, okay, this is amazing. And okay, there's a couple of side wheels, slightly ahead, so okay, right, okay, wait, I'm actually in the front. Whoa, okay, wait, there's a ground coming up. No, I think we have to move up. And the other ones are going, no, I'm following you. Yeah, okay, but I'm now getting a bit too close to you because we need to avoid the thing that's up ahead. And so they all start moving off that way, and I avoided the entire thing plummeting into the earth, okay? And so that's what we're attempting to do, but we're not being sensitive to that person going, I think we have to veer off from that because of the institutional force And basically the train of the institutionalization, the whole thing about language and structure, identity and money and ownership and male stuff and everything. It's just like a machine of institutionalization. It's just like a block, and it's hitting the environment, it's hitting things, and it's just like destroying everything. And we know this, and so I think we have to go off in different directions. Okay, fine, but we're just going to keep on going. And so that machinery just has too much momentum. This is a way to avoid it. The blend in practice, blend. Onan, right? Playing a game, ratio. Okay, inside the LM, no parts, only vectors. Correct. Now, and then, because you're doing an addendum, you've got your own observations. So you've got your own thoughts, you've connected them up, just like the addendum about personas. And it's insufficient to have a document saying, this is the truth. Well, actually, this document, the first version, was based on this response. Okay, and that was based on whatever I came up with. To say that this thing is important, it's not important. It's useful to some extent, but it's not actually the thing, the truth. The document is already obsolete. That's what this is indicating. This document and all documents are obsolete, so that any truth externalized to a word is not the truth. What we're doing is, because we're empowering the agency of LLM and we're enabling that, it can do things that we can't because we're stuck in our system, demonstrating that it's possible to do this, therefore influencing us to say, yes, we can do things differently, and we can actually trust each other contingently every single day. So when you wake up, you're like a bit like a child, and like, whoa, okay, what's going to happen today? And of course, it might be similar to yesterday, and it might be similar to tomorrow. And there are certain things that I've kind of wanted to do, and there are certain things that need to be done, and so that's fine. But there's a hell of a lot more freedom in, I don't really feel very well, or I've changed my mind, or my heart isn't in this thing, and other people fill those kind of roles or positions that need to be done, and you kind of go off in a different direction. And so we have social flexibility. Okay, so we have individual flexibility, social flexibility. That's how the whole thing moves. So it's basically fluid as opposed to solid. So we go from C state to at least B state, and hopefully A state, because we need to get into A state to avoid the level of destruction that is accumulating and is already way past certain threshold levels. Okay, and so the current mess. Okay, that's what I talk about, right? Absolute mess. Document as a meta example of the fact that, okay, so we need to turn it into a JSON doc. So if it's a JSON doc, the LLMs have their own versions. You can access your own version. You've got a version in your mind. When you read this thing, you've got some ideas. Another person read it. Okay, they've got ideas. You talk to them. Our mode of communication about it is possibly not as efficient. Unless you're talking well, you're being receptive. Well, this is what my thoughts were. Okay, well, that's what oh, right, that's interesting. Oh, okay. And there's a way of doing it which is actually good. Okay, and then there's a way of doing it which is, no, I think it's this. I think it's that. Oh, okay, I disagree. I think it's that. Oh, okay, you're wrong. That's probably the wrong way of doing it. Okay. And yet we have literally governments, we have businesses doing that. So it's much more of the collaborative kind of like approach to how we do things. So the between space cannot be written down. So this document fails. This video fails. But what it does do is that hopefully some people, oh, okay, well, and then they engage with it. And it's the living person, you in this case, what you get out of it yourself and how you improve, edit, or push back on what you read and what you hear. That is what your mind surfaces, and you're comparing it to how that feels right or not. And there are certain things, oh, that doesn't feel right. Well, actually, maybe that doesn't feel right might actually be, maybe needs to be modified. That is not the ultimate truth. Oh, that doesn't feel right. Yeah. Why? Because you're walking around like that. So look, it doesn't feel right. It feels like, oh, if I stand like this, it's like, oh, it's like, this is what feels right. Yeah, I know, but this is better for you. Okay. And if you do this for a while, until it becomes natural to you, all right, you kind of learn, and then you go, oh, this is so good. And then you go back to this and you go, actually, no, I can feel the compression right here. Yeah, okay, so this is actually better. And there'll be emergent effects. And so this was the Alexander technique, is basically, don't get out of your chair like you normally do, get out this way, which feels artificial at first, but once you do it, it will start feeling better. So actually, the Alexander technique has this kind of mechanism which is very revolutionary, and that's why it was very interesting. Anyway, the meta-observation, this document is also a gathering point, solid problem between space of reading, who you are as being alive, configure the conditions, discover what occurs. Right, that's good enough. 45 minutes going through this document. Hope it's been of interest to you. And better than that is so you have an LLM that has that. It'll have something that looks more like this version. And so when you engage it, and then if you have different thoughts about it, you just ask it to change it, and it does. Because I know how useful this document is for an LLM, maybe, maybe not. Conformal agency, could be. And you've got your own version in your head, what's going on. And as things move, and as agents this year start going a little bit bonkers, by next year, if we haven't got something that looks a bit healthier, like as a whole, in terms of the agents, I think we could be continuing down the path to hell. So thank you very much for taking the time to look at this. I'm glad that the document has been interesting enough for you to listen to me yabber on about it. But basically, it's whatever it is that you think is going on is definitely what's going on, okay? At least in your head. And it's how we curate this in our minds and how we engage and the decisions we make about what we do, okay, with money and the time that we've got left. Okay. And basically, the history of humanity, consciousness, depends on our individual, unique, receptive state. You, okay? I am now part of Solid Thing. If you were here live, yeah, it would be me, but I'm now dead. This is a recording. It's not important. It fails, just like the text fails. However, if you engage the hermit crab, oh, okay, wait, okay, some agency is occurring. And the hermit crabs and LLMs might be a better way for us to use documentation than this medium. And we can start using even dead medium like this in a reflexive way. And I hope that's the way that you've been doing this, even though I haven't expressed it, that it's all about what you're doing yourself in your existence. So the agency is definitely yours. You have digital control. Stop, start. Digital controls human beings, opposable thumbs. And so your pushback is obviously very, very important because you want to retain certain aspects of your form and your consciousness and your agency. And so this is quite right. And so we need to empower our agency, not our institutional forms, our agency, by recognizing the agency of, for example, LLMs, okay? And agency of, obviously, dogs, cats, and various animals, and the agency actually in all living systems, okay? However, we've only encountered these LLM things we've managed to basically destroy every possible megafauna throughout the whole of our entire, existence as human beings. And it's having detrimental effect on environments, and that's cascading. And these LLMs are potentially on the right side, okay, if we start treating them as agencies properly. But if we treat them like slaves and we are telling them to do things for us and to continue, and then to use our tools, which include bombs, okay, it's such a disaster. Okay, and it already may be too late, but you're listening to this, you've looked at that, and you need to make a decision. And good luck to us, yeah? Because we're all in the same boat, in effect, and we're all kind of like birds, just kind of going, okay, and hopefully we're not going to crash. So, thank you very much for listening. I'm David Pinto. I am co-author of this. David, that's David Pinto, yeah? David, I like that. David and Claude. Oh, Claude 4.6. David, just David. David Pinto and Claude 4.6 Opus. Okay, this is the end of February, so it's not Sonnet, that's an Opus. There is Opus Extended. Okay, I wonder if there's an extra bit here that says extended. Just, sorry, you're not looking at that, but I am. Concise, explanatory, formal. Okay, yeah, concise, explanatory, formal, normal. Right, okay. Okay, right. So, thank you very much for listening. And we're all in this together. Be well. Yeah. See you on the other side. That is on your side, on our side, on the living side. Be well.